Hello everybody, welcome to the I Am IT Geek YouTube channel. My name is Shabaz, as ever I'm the IT Geek. Welcome back to, I promise, the final episode in Module 2. It's been a long episode, about 12, a long module, about 12 episodes if I'm not mistaken, maybe even more. So a lot of ground to cover obviously, so I want to make sure we spread it out and we don't do anything injustice, so that's why it's been a bit longer than I expected, or than I originally kind of explained. And plus Microsoft obviously changing their syllabus halfway through the recording of the series, we had to change up a little bit, but we are flexible. We want to make sure we're giving you the most up-to-date information. So this is the last episode in Module 2. And this is back to the sort of implement access for Azure Resources topic. This is the second part of that. Dwayne is not with me, again for this part. Unfortunately, just again some of our calendars clashing. Unfortunately, mine, not Dwayne's. It was me that wasn't available last few days. So again, thank you very much, Dwayne. He's been really helpful and really understanding. He has recorded the lab, which you'll see at the end. So thank you very much to Dwayne. So let's crack on with this final episode of Module 2, shall we? So again, not going to bore you and explain who me and Dwayne are. Hopefully you know by now. I will give you a reminder at the start of Module 3, like I've said a few times. This final time we're going to see me looking scared of the cloud. We are finally at the end of the implement and authentication and access management solution topic. And as we said, this is part 2 of the implement access management for Azure Resources topic. So this episode is going to look at using managed identities to access Azure Resources. We'll then look at analyzing Azure role permissions. And finally, we're going to finish it off by looking at configuring Azure Key Vault RBAC and policies. And then Dwayne will do a demo on that exact topic, okay? So getting straight into it, let's talk about using managed identities to access Azure Resources. So with managed identities for Azure Resources, it's a feature of Azure Active Directory, first of all. So again, it's included as part of your subscription. Each Azure service that supports managed identities are subject to their own timeline as well. So each sort of managed identity has its own timeline. There's no sort of cross timelines with managed identities. Make sure you review the availability status of your managed identity for your resources and of any known issues before you begin, because that's just going to save you a lot of time and pain really, that when you do start using managed identities. After you've configured an Azure resource with a managed identity, you can give that managed identity access to another resource. Okay, so once you've done all that reviewing and you've reviewed the availability and you've kind of the status of it, you can then grant that access to the resource. Let's look at analyzing Azure role permissions. So there are 2 primary places where permissions can be assigned. You've got a user or a group level, okay? However, they do all pass down to the user, to the final point. So even if it is a group, the user inherits those permissions. You'll find that when it comes to default permissions, there are significant differences between a member default permission and a guest account default permission. That's something I just want to quickly touch on. Some differences in default permissions for a member and for a guest. So if we look at the member first of all, members can enumerate lists of users and their own contacts as well. So they have more sort of access there. They have the ability to invite guest users onto the tenant, as long as you give them, you enable that. They can create both security and M365 groups as a member. And they have the ability to register new applications as well. So let's compare that to a guest user. Firstly, they can only read their own properties. They're able to read properties of their own account only. An existing guest account invite can be sent from a guest user as well. So a bit of a similarity there between a member and a guest. They have the ability to search for non-hidden groups by name as well. So if obviously, unfortunately, if it's a hidden group, they don't have access, but non-hidden groups, they can search those as a guest. And they can read properties of apps. Any properties of a registered and enterprise application specifically, but they can't register them. They can read the properties. So again, you can see quite a significant difference there between a member and a guest. Let's look at control permissions, specifically user settings. I want to start off with. So you can use the user settings inside of Azure AD. You can manage your menu to restrict or control the default permissions of the default users. So you can control if a user has the ability to register an application. You can restrict access to the Azure portal for member users. You have the ability to block the integration with LinkedIn as well, and I think Dwayne has shown the user settings in one of his old demos in one of the previous modules, so do check that one out. Finally, you can manage settings for external collaboration. So this is as far as guest access and business to business. So let's stick on control permissions, but I want to talk about roles and administrators now. So you only want to grant permissions a user needs. If they don't need a permission, goes back to that least privilege access. Be careful to know what all permissions are granted when you assign a role. Again, someone needs read only, don't be giving them contributor access, stuff like that. Make sure you understand exactly what they need. You can see a list of the permissions in the attribute definition reader. There are two sets of permissions. There's role permissions, and then there's guest service and principal basic read as well. So I just want to talk about configuring Azure Key Vault RBAC policies. This is obviously something we're going to see in the demo later. So you can grant access to Azure Key Vault using either role-based access control, or RBAC as we know it, or using something called Key Vault access policies. Either method works to protect your secrets, those certificates, and your keys. So access policies give you a little more granular control, but it can be harder to manage sometimes. So you need to choose the option that best suits your security posture requirements or your organization's security posture requirements. A Key Vault policy or Key Vault access policy determines whether a user, an application, or a group can perform operations on Key Vault secrets, keys, and certificates. Carrying on with configuring RBAC policies. You can assign access policies using the Azure portal, Azure CLI, or even PowerShell. So just again, different tooling, depends what your requirements are, if it's GUI or command line. Key Vault supports up to 1024 access policy entries, with each entry granting a distinct set of permissions to a particular security principle. So it's quite a few access policy entries. And finally, what Microsoft recommend is assigning access policies to groups of users where possible, rather than individual users. And if you look at security in general, we go back to NTFS permissions on premises, with Windows servers, it's the same thing. Sign it at the group level rather than individual users. It's more secure at the group level. It's easier to manage, much less administrator overhead. So I'm going to pass over to Dwayne again to go through his demo. So over to you, Dwayne.
Thanks, Shabaz, and welcome to this demo for this video in the series. We've been talking about Azure Key Vault, so let's look at what we can do in terms of roles and RBAC settings within Azure Key Vault. So here we have our ability and our access control in here to use our access. Here we can check our access. We can use principal names, users, or groups. We can use managed identities for specific access. We have our role assignments where we can look and see what resources, and you can see there's some resources in here that have contributor, and these are apps that have the ability that have roles to our Key Vault and can pull. And if they have a contributor role in our Key Vault, they can create secrets in the Key Vault. They can pull secrets and keys from this key vault as well. We can then also, like we can in any other resource, set roles, and you can see we've got our key vault roles, we got our log analytics, we've got our monitoring roles in here, because a lot of monitor and log analytics feed into, come from, the activity needs to feed into monitor and log analytics. And that we have all of our key vault roles in here in terms of administrator, crypto officers, very, again, can get very granular in our roles within Azure Key Vault. We have then access policies that we can create also, and we can enable those so that when we create resources within our subscription, we can create these access policies and allow. And you can see what we can do is we can specify virtual machines and by default that they can retrieve certificates. Same thing with Azure Resource Manager and with Azure Disk Encryption. We can specify that they can all grab the certificates and the keys that they need and retrieve the secrets and keys to decrypt information by default if we enable these. Here we can also create those role-based permissions in here and utilize Azure role-based permissions and allow users to sign in using their Azure credentials rather than utilizing things such as the access policies. We get an access policy in here. You can see we can configure those, configure what that policy is going to use, use it for a specific template. So let's say we're going to use it just for secret management, and we can set up those, and you can see it sets it up specifically for secrets. We can adjust those to be, again, very granular policies, and we can select then the principal that it's going to adhere to. And that can be an application, that can be a group, that can be a user that is going to use that access policy. If we go back here and look at the access policy that is with my user, you can see we've got full-on operations for key management, full-on operations for secret, full-on operations for certificates. So my user, because it's a global administrator, has pretty much anything. You don't want everybody to have that, or every principal or resource to have those. We can get, again, very granular. If we only want a virtual machine to be able to get information from a database or write information to a database, but we don't want them to be able to delete it, we can create a policy specific to that. So that I think brings us to the end of how we can set up role-based access control for our resources here within the access control for our Key Vault, as well as then how we can get a little bit more granular, so we can set up to enable policies by default, enable for virtual machines and for Resource Manager and for Azure Disk Encryption when those resources are created, as well as set up then some more granular policies for other users and applications and platforms as we need within our resource, within our Key Vault and our subscription. So that being said, I will pass it back to you, Shabaz, to close out this video. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. Another great lab again and demo. This time on those the Key Vault RBAC policies that we discussed earlier in this episode. So finally, it brings end to module 2. Really excited to get involved with module 3 and see what we have in store for you then. That'll be in the next drop in a couple of days. So please do keep an eye out for that. This has been a long module. Module 2 has been quite big, got to admit. I never thought it was going to end, but I actually we've covered a lot of topics, a lot of ground. Please do let us know if you feel like there's anything we've missed, or if there's any questions you have around the topic or the topics that we've covered. All our information about our socials is in the description. You can also get, most importantly, a link to Dwayne's SC300 book we've packed. A great book. I was lucky enough to be the technical reviewer of that book. And it was great, working with Dwayne on that project, and it's great working with Dwayne on these videos. Please do buy that book, follow it as you go along with these videos, it'll complement each other really well. We also have a link to the GitHub SC300 labs, so please follow those as you're following on with Dwayne's labs and demos. So we will see you in module 3. So thank you, and up until next time, goodbye.